Thank you for coming. I'm happy to have you here.
Likewise, it's great to be here.
Tell us the story of your name sign.
My name is Lauren, and my name is signed this way. There is a story behind my name sign. Growing up, my sign was an L shape by my temple. It was a common name sign given by a hearing teacher, a hearing parent, which I accepted. Then I entered high school, and another person already had the same name sign, so I became LT, LT, LT. I never really liked LT. Then I got married and my last name changed, so LT didn't make sense anymore. I was in California, was working on a project supporting my husband, and I kept telling him it was important to keep things simple. Simple. I kept repeating simple, and someone caught that I would tend to say simple, and that it should be my name sign for Lauren. I thought, yes, so that became my name sign. Cool. Where'd you get that?
That's a secret. What do you think of that? You said that in 2018 you said you wanted to be a superhero. Now, you actually are a superhero. How does that make you feel?
I'm still processing that. You know, when they asked me to be a part of the Marvel movie, I didn't audition. They reached out to me after I had a meeting with the director. It didn't feel real. We shot the movie over 6 months, and it still didn't feel real. We did scenes individually, and they were all edited together afterwards. I recall before they released the movie, my team gathered with me in a room and presented me a box. I didn't know what it was, and I opened it, and it was a different figurine than this one, a bigger one, and a Lego minifig. And that's when it struck me. That was when it became concrete and real that I was a superhero, that people would actually start collecting things with my likeness and put it on somewhere and look up to it. To me, that represented a huge step in seeing my deafness as something to celebrate. That is a form of power. It's so exciting still to see something like that. I don't know how you got that because my family, my two sons, and my husband have gone to different McDonald's on weekends looking for it, and they've been out.
Maybe we can give it to you. You taught in school, you were on Broadway, The Walking Dead, now Eternals. Your journey has been amazing, especially with how fast it has been. How did you find out about auditions? Did you have a network in Hollywood?
Can I back up a little and share how it all started? Really, I started as a teacher and taught for almost 10 years. Then I decided to take time off to focus on raising my two sons, both of whom are deaf. Who was going to be their language model? Me. So I left teaching to focus on them. When my second son was just a baby, someone who I knew vaguely from back in my Miss Deaf America days reached out to me and wanted to know if I would be interested in doing one-on-one tutoring with a high-profile Broadway director. He wanted to see what it was like to interact with another deaf person. So I said sure. There weren't a lot of details, and it was somewhat vague, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to get out of the house every once in a while. For a little break. We would go out once a week for about an hour, and that's what we did for over a year. We'd meet at a coffee shop, sometimes go to a museum, gallery, park, or various environments because our connection became more than just tutoring. I was showing how a deaf person navigates the world, how hearing people perceive things, how non-signers interact with me. He would then watch and take in these interactions. That was important for him to see. Then he disappeared. He was busy with TV shows and all kinds of things. A year later, he showed up again and reached out saying he was going to bring back a famous play, Children of a Lesser God, which won a Tony back in the 1980s with Phyllis Freelick. which then turned into a movie with Marlee Matlin, and she won an Oscar. So he decided it was time to bring it back to the stage, and he wanted me to help him prepare for the talent search, how to find actors, and so on. And the whole time, I did not think, maybe me, because in my mind, the lead of the story, Sarah Norman, is a young white woman. I'm a Black Mexican mom of 2 sons. I didn't think I fit the profile at all. So I said sure and met with his casting director to share the information with him. I didn't realize the director at the time was already interested in me and wanted me to meet the casting director. So I'm glad I didn't know. I was clueless because it wasn't my intention to be cast. And good thing I didn't know because I was relaxed and simply having a conversation. Right. Then they asked me to do a table read. This is when you read the script in front of an audience of investors to see if the material is good and worth producing. They told me they couldn't find another actor right away and asked if I wouldn't mind sitting in for now. The director emphasized he didn't intend the read to be for the role, but that it was just a reading for this moment. So I said, okay, and I did the table read. After we finished, they pulled me aside and said, if this gets picked up for Broadway, would you be willing to go all in? Yes, we want you. It was a nice surprise, and I just said, okay, but thought to myself, I'm not a serious actor. I then dove into it all. We had a boot camp with intense training for 3 months, every day, all day. We moved to a small town and worked on the play there before we went to Broadway. We did performances in the small town all summer to test things out and then brought it to Broadway. Unfortunately, the play closed early due to the timing and the play not aging well. However, from the play, I received a Tony nomination, and that in turn led to other things. The Walking Dead was searching for a deaf actor, and they casted someone, but my manager at the time, said submit an audition. I said no, it's too late, I missed out. He said to try and submit something anyway. I sent my submission in. They decided to move the other person previously casted into a newly created role for them and put me in the original role.
Ah.
It was supposed to be for just 1 episode. So I made my appearance for the show, and then they called me back for another episode and another, and so on until I became a series regular.
They must really enjoy your acting. You must have something about you that ultimately drew them into keep having you come back. And you've continued on with filming.
Yes, I'm still going. This is my 3rd year with The Walking Dead. I'm thankful to them for giving me the experience and really my start in Hollywood.
Eternals. Before you tell us more about Eternals, when you arrived on set the first day to get started with filming, what were your emotions like and what was going through your mind when you first arrived? You had already had your first day on Broadway. You then had a first day on The Walking Dead and working with cast members and the director. Was Eternals a similar experience emotionally?
There are 3 groups: stage, television, and movie. They're each a different animal, truly, so different. Theater for me really started with the table read, and when I arrived, I'll tell you, I cried. I cried in the bathroom before we started. I cried because I don't know if you know, but I grew up signing and speaking using the total communication approach. So I was used to using my voice, and I realized this was a strong audio-based world, and people put a lot of value in that. The ability to speak. And they were starting to equate my speech to my intelligence, and they were not equal. So at 13, I decided to take control of that perception of me and decided to stop using my voice. I didn't give them a choice, and I forced them to look at me and find my intelligence in other ways. So I stopped using my voice at 13. So for 25 years, I didn't use my voice. I mean, even when I gave birth to my boys naturally without any drugs, I still didn't use my voice. I wasn't holding it in. I just completely disconnected the need to use it. It simply wasn't me and wasn't a part of my identity at that time. So here it was 25 years later, and I was in the bathroom crying because I knew that at one point in the story, there is a pivotal scene where Sarah, the lead, screams, and starts speaking in her broken speech. So I asked if I had to use my voice, and the director said yes. He didn't understand. I let him know I had not used my voice for 25 years and that I didn't even know if I had a voice. I was scared and thought, what do I need to use my voice for? A curious group of onlookers who are all hearing people? But I thought, no, this is more about presenting a story that needs to be told again and again. We need more content like this out there. And if I balk, will that content go missing? Or will someone else, someone who isn't deaf, take that opportunity? I felt I had a responsibility to share this story, so I wiped my tears and screamed. I'm so glad I did. After that, and from that point forward, night after night, over and over, I screamed and I claimed my power again over my own body, over my voice, from the core outward. That was mine. I controlled it. That was so powerful for me.
Your reclaiming moment.
Yes. Then with television, I was already a huge fan of TWD. That's short for The Walking Dead. So I had been following the story, so when they selected me, I was taken aback. When I arrived the first day, wow, we were shooting the final scene for the main lead of the show. This last scene looped back to the exact same scene at the very first scene of the show. So it was like going full circle for me, especially seeing it all right in front of me. It was a huge honor, overwhelming and exciting. It was really motivating, and I honestly had no idea of what to expect. I felt very naive. Then there is Eternals. I had more experience by then, along with some more expectations. I was still scared because I was going to be working with some A-list actors, big movie stars, ones whose names everyone in the world knows, and I'm working with them. I thought, who am I? That was an overwhelming moment for me. Fortunately, the first day we shot the last scene of the entire film, it was a very intimate moment. I felt like that scene helped break the ice fast.
Well, today is my first time meeting you. I didn't know much about you, so I Googled you to learn more. My perception of your frame is that you're brave, friendly, a newer actor. I wonder about what those in the deaf community that have been involved with acting for a while think about seeing you navigate to the top. It seems as though the stars just aligned.
It's interesting. Do I have expectations of how people perceive me? As I mentioned, growing up, I was confused. I didn't realize that I could take control of how people perceive me. Yes, I decided to stop using my voice. That was my one way of taking control of how people perceive me. I choose my modality of expression, and my modality was signing. I didn't realize what I did at the time was considered radical. In high school, I remember a moment in driver's ed class. I was 16 years old and we were practicing filling out the form for the written portion of the driver's test. I was going through, marking the answers, and came across one about ethnicity. I asked the teacher if I could check two boxes, African American and Hispanic. The teacher said no, you need to select one. I looked at it and wasn't sure how to choose. So I ended up selecting other. Other became my catch-all phrase for a while. I was other, mixed, mutt, and looking back, that's interesting because that is how I set up how people perceived me, vaguely, because I wasn't sure how I perceived myself yet. I had a conversation with my parents about it, and they had strong opinions, but I felt they didn't understand because I had another layer on top of it, being deaf. Being Mexican helped my father identify with his experience as a Mexican, his experience as a Spanish speaker, and the way he modeled himself for the world to perceive him. My mother, being Black, connected with her experiences growing up in the 1950s and 1960s, navigating discrimination and other related things. I didn't experience what my father did, and I didn't experience what my mother went through, but here I am, Black and Mexican. What I experienced in that moment was related to being deaf. I had a deaf experience. Then fast forward to Miss Deaf America. I recall being crowned, then labeled as the first Black Miss Deaf America. And I remember my dad at the time saying, "Hey, what about being Mexican? You're half Mexican. That's important. Are you embarrassed?" And I told him, "No, that's how they chose to perceive me. But you have to understand, I didn't do anything. At that time, I didn't understand what I had and how I could take control of how people perceive me." So now, having been through more and exposed to more, I've realized I'm going to label myself as Black and Mexican. And even within the more specific titles of like Afro Latina, Latinx, Latin, I'm embracing it now. It's a journey. And the way I perceive myself will always change. I worked with Salma Hayek, and she inspired me as I saw her own narrative change. That's what made me realize it's normal to always actively work on adjusting our frame. Our frame isn't set, it's always being adjusted. It depends on the environment, the time, current conversations, and so on. I saw how Salma was labeled as a Mexican actress, but lately she's been labeling herself as Mexican and Arabian. She's now addressing her own mixed background. That has inspired me. So while doing the press tour for Marvel, I used the opportunity to take more control. People decide that I am deaf, but I can control that I'm deaf, Black, and Latina. I'm curious about you. How do you set your frame? What's your process for that?
Really, my vision of my frame is through my social media post. People who don't know me, especially if they see my videos for the Daily Moth, for example, will look at my profile, learn more about me, just like I did with you. It goes full circle, as you know. When they read my social media posts, they learn that I'm a very opinionated person, but I'm still very careful. For example, if there is some information that I'm not sure about, I tend to not to share my opinion about it until I know and I'm more comfortable with the topic. I want people to see me as I see myself, not as the opposite. So I present myself how I want to be perceived. I know people look at me and see my skin color and my gender, and I already know that, but with my opinions and how I present myself, I'm always careful. So now that you're a movie star, I want to ask you if there are any movie stars that you look up to and want to mimic their acting skills.
Do I have any movie stars that I look up to and want to mimic? No. Honestly, no. I admire many movie stars for their work, but if my goal was to reproduce their work, I would never feel satisfied. So I look to different celebrities for inspiration. However, I do have a role model, Frida Kahlo. She was not an actor, but she was an artist. The reason why I look up to her is because she is a Mexican woman that created a space for female artists. If you look at her work, she tends to focus on herself as her subject, takes control of her own gaze and how people perceive her. She took control of that too. So all of her portraits are the same. Her face is in the middle, not in the top corner or the bottom corner, in the middle, as if she is saying, "I am here and I have no apologies." They're very strong, very natural, sitting and gazing. I love that. She set that frame, and that is how I want people to view me. I'm here and I'm unapologetic.
Yeah, that is powerful. You mentioned mimicking. You're right. You are the original you.
Yes, that is something I realized not too long ago, more recently. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately for both The Walking Dead and Eternals. This is the sign for Eternals. The interviews tend to be set up for a full day, for a week, and they're each about 4 minutes long. There were some interviews that were 10 minutes long and a few that were 25 minutes, but most were just 4 minutes. That's what a press junket looks like, with different outlets having the opportunity to sit down with you. So during those interviews, I started to feel anxious. They kept asking me, "So, what's it like to represent the deaf community? What's it like to be the first deaf superhero?" That weighed heavily on my shoulders and made me think, can I represent the deaf community? Can I represent the Black Latino community too? Not many people ask me that. I'm not just deaf. I am a deaf Black Latina. I struggled because I think, who am I to represent everyone? When I was Miss Deaf America, I was an ambassador for the deaf community, and that's when I used the phrase we. In the beginning, I included that a lot, but then I woke up and realized no, I believe using we is dangerous. I cannot tell your story for you. I can't, and I refuse to.
That's fair.
Right. I can only tell my story. I can only represent myself. So that we became me and I. I originally understood the fear in speaking about me came off as my having an ego. But no, when I talk about me, it's being authentic and involved. My story is authentic. I hope that when I tell my story, someone else out there will connect and understand based on their similar experiences.
Okay, talking about being Latina and Black, did you grow up always feeling proud to be Latina and Black? What was your journey with finding your identity?
You know, it was a very confusing time. Was it hard? No, but confusing, yes. I feel comfortable saying that now. Yes, it was a confusing time because here I am, deaf, my father is Mexican, my mother is Black, and both are very proud. They both looked at me as an important part of their cultures and communities. But also, it was in the way the world perceived me. I present myself, the way I look through my hair, skin color, behavior. People saw me as Black. People decided for me, and I agree, I am Black. But when I'm with my Mexican family, I'm Mexican. I was confused because am I still Black in my Mexican family and Mexican with my Black family? And it was confusing. I look back and I see that I was being culturally fluid. It's a wonderful opportunity to have, to be able to fit in both. And I love that about being a mix of Black and
Oh,
Mexican.
I love your story. It's heartwarming. Thank you for sharing.
I'm curious about you as a deaf Black woman. What has that journey been like for you?
Growing up, I was deaf first. I was a little embarrassed that I was Black until after college. There were some social justice issues coming out, and they talked about loving your identity. I finally had that space where I could reveal that I was proud to be Black. But growing up, I did not feel that way.
Did you feel that if you showed yourself as Black, that it would diminish other parts of you?
I thought, that's a good question. I thought if I was a proud Black person that people would perceive me as not being proud of being deaf. Growing up, it was about being deaf and the deaf experience, not about the Black experience. I didn't have that. I knew there was oppression and racism. I mean, I took classes that discussed slavery, but it was about being deaf first. But later I realized that one is not more than the other and that I could be proud of being both. It's a part of my core identity.
Yes, and I feel like I'm learning how to talk about it. It's a skill that comes later in life. I didn't, I feel well versed about how to talk about my deaf experience and my deaf narrative. But can I share my Black and Mexican identities layered with my deaf identity? And how do I present that? I didn't know. It really requires practice. Do you feel that way too?
Yes, I agree. I think it ties to how Hollywood looks at deaf actors, and the roles remain the same. They focus on deafness, how the character cannot hear, their ears, not using their voice. I'm curious, in your recent role with Eternals, it's different. It focuses on your actions and your abilities. It feels like Hollywood is starting to shift. What shift are you noticing based on the past and now moving forward? Do you envision more roles? What narratives do you want to see more of for deaf actors in Hollywood?
It's an exciting time now because just last week it was released the TV series with another deaf superhero involved in the MCU. It's already going, and I feel that Hollywood is shifting and they're ready, curious, and afraid. What I see is some fear and doubt because they don't want to offend or make missteps. I think right now is a good time to be gentle. We want to push and be gentle at the same time to support that change. And yes, I just this week, I've been doing a lot of pitches and feel that through the pitches, by pitch, I don't mean throwing a ball, but putting out various story ideas. The hope is for the network to accept these ideas and produce them. I feel that today we are ready to produce more relatable content. Really, that's important with content increasing so we can celebrate things that come up right now and spotlight deaf people. I want to say deaf diaspora. I don't know if that's the right word, but that history of a variety of people and individuals who make up a community. I feel we're starting to show that it's why I feel that's an important start to the conversations, whether those spotlights are perfect or not. Again, it's what Hollywood does. They produce stories that force us to analyze ourselves, force us to have those conversations over and over again. So when I see buzz about a movie release or how deaf characters are represented, I think it's a good thing.
So, based on your response, it seems we're on the right path.
Yes, it's really interesting for me and my team right now. We're developing stories with, I'm starting with them. I've been planting seeds in their minds, and I can see the shift already. In the beginning, it was more about sign language. Okay, how do we integrate that? And they were first focused on the signing. It's important, yes, but it's not the only thing about being deaf. There's so much more to add. Now, as we've been meeting more frequently and as I've been expanding my own story, their view has expanded and they're realizing it's more than just signing. The spacing, your history, microaggressions that we face, and so on. I'm so excited. They're starting to see it. The challenge now is how to present and share that with the general public. I recently had a conversation with an actor, Carrie. It was a wonderful conversation, a one-on-one conversation that we were able to have as moms, Black women, navigating today.
Ah, Kerry Washington.
She's a beautiful person, and we talked about that experience. I asked her, how do you open doors and break down these barriers? In interviews, they ask, what do you need to improve? What challenges do you face? How do you be specific without biting anyone's hand? You don't want to burn bridges, but make foundational changes. Carrie said, I suggest that is not the place to start making changes. Where you start making changes is within. One-on-one experiences. That's where you'll see the most change, not blasting it out everywhere and making people you work with taken aback when learning about it for the first time. It's about starting conversations with that person one-on-one. That's how you create a relationship and positive change. It was powerful advice for me.
You mentioned that Hollywood might be a little scared. You mentioned investors and story ideas. You want to push for change in Hollywood. I'm glad you mentioned that. How much control or how much say did you have over your script with The Walking Dead and Eternals?
I want to say I feel I underestimated how much control I have. And that is something I needed to experience first. In the beginning, just like anyone else, like yourself, I'm sure, with a new job, you're on your best behavior, kind of like the dating stage. Your eyes are beaming and you're happy to be there, no complaints. I'm not going to push. I admit I'm guilty of that. There was a moment when I realized, no, that is not okay. This cannot continue any longer. So I addressed a person I felt I trusted, that I could convey my concern with honesty, and said, you need to pull in an ASL consultant. I was beginning to see how they were relying on me to review the script, and even if I wasn't there, I had to read it and think about their lines. It really consumed a lot of my time. With the other actors learning sign, I had to send videos of the signing to them, while I still had to work on memorizing my own lines. I told them it was time for an ASL consultant. And again, as I told you, The Walking Dead, they were wonderful and fast learners. The first year, they started with one interpreter. The second year, they had 4 interpreters ready to go. The third year, I was ready. So I asked for the ASL consultant, and they immediately brought one on and apologized. They saw the responsibility and weight it was putting on me and brought on an ASL consultant. They really changed things. Now I can let the ASL consultant take that role. It's been similar with the script. I've been learning how to step up and speak up. At Marvel, the people I work with, they're A-listers. They're veterans. They're experienced. They are where they are today because of what they do. They speak out. So I've been observing them and learning from other people that I've been working with.
You have 2 sons. Have they seen you in the Eternals movie? How do they feel about seeing their mom as a superhero? As you mentioned before, in 2018, you wanted to be a superhero. Now you are a real superhero.
It really shows the power of manifestation. I remember that interview clearly when I put that out there, half joking, half serious. I thought, what is the craziest thing people could look up to? A superhero that is deaf. I threw it out there, and here we are. I found myself sitting, watching a big movie screen with my 2 boys, sitting next to me, watching, seeing, signing on the screen, not struggling to overcome deafness, everything there as is. That is a huge step in shifting how people perceive deafness. It's a true reflection of real life. No, I don't have that speed, darn it, but it's exactly how I feel when I wake up and go about my day. Yes, I'm deaf. It just is. Just like I'm Black. It just is. Mexican. It just is. Is it a challenge sometimes? Yes, but it's not something I struggle with on a daily basis. So I'm thrilled to finally have that shown on a global scale internationally. So it's not just America. It's all over the globe. In third world countries, when people can see what a deaf person can do, I hope that helps shift perceptions and attitudes within other countries too.
Thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure getting to know more about you. You're amazing and so easy to chat with. I didn't have any preconceived notions before meeting, but now my image of you is beautiful.
Thank you. You made it so easy to chat. It feels real.